The top stories tonight in Y News. A day after Trixie Cruz Angeles tendered her resignation as press secretary, at least 3 names have emerged as her possible replacement.
The country has logged 450 measles and rubella cases for the first 9 months of this year.
A medical scholarship program to be partially funded by foreign countries sourcing Filipino healthcare workers is being proposed by the Department of Migrant Workers.
Ukraine is readying evacuation centers at its capital city of Kyiv in preparation for a potential nuclear attack.
Researchers are funding studies on wax worms in a potential advance in combating climate change. Good evening, Philippines and the world. Today is Wednesday, the 5th of October, 2022. Join us in the next hour as we deliver today's top stories around the Philippines and in other parts of the world. I am William Theo.
We're also seen in 1,935 satellite monitoring centers nationwide and via live streaming worldwide through the UNTV News and Rescue social media channels. I am Harin Delgado.
First in the news, the country's inflation accelerated further in September to 6.9%, its highest in 4 years. Ray Pelayo explains why.
The biggest factor in the 6.9% inflation recorded in September is food. Fish, meat, vegetables, and sugar are among the food commodities that have recorded a high inflation, confirming to the Philippine Statistics Authority or PSA.
Itong tatlong groups under the food commodity group, meat, fish, and vegetables, ito yung tinitingnan namin. Pag tumataas kasi itong tatlong ito, at ito yung nakikita natin in the previous months, talagang tumataas yung food inflation. And this will also have a ripple effect doon sa isa pang subgroup, yung restaurant and accommodation services.
Increased prices for housing, water, electricity, fuel, gas, and transportation are also inflation drivers. A contributing factor to the rise in inflation is the depreciation of the peso against the US dollar. Compared to the 6.3% inflation rate in August of this year and the 4.2% inflation rate in the same month last year, the September inflation rate is higher. According to PSA, the most recent instance of high inflation occurred in February 2009 with 7.2%, while the highest instance occurred in August 2008 during the global financial crisis with 10.5%. Because of the high cost of food and the impact of Super Typhoon Karding on agriculture, PSA is continuously monitoring the situation and predicting the possibility of higher inflation in the remaining 3 months of the year. Ray Pelayo, UNTV News and Rescue, we serve the people, we give glory to God.
President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. committed to making sure that actions to combat climate change are taken under his watch. Nelma Bohok reports why.
The nation's adaptation to the new norms of climate change is included in the national agenda. President Bongbong Marcos Jr. provided the assurance in a speech delivered during the multi-stakeholder forum for 2022 that was organized by the Department of Environment and Natural Resources.
As your president, I assure you that our environment and our country's resiliency and adaptation to the new normals of climate change are on top of the national agenda.
PBBM stated that everyone must be committed and determined to steer our practices and systems toward a greener direction if the fight against climate change is to be successful.
In this collective fight, we are not soldiers. We are stewards. There will be no weapons to use, only behaviors and practices to improve upon. Victory will not come by defeating the visible enemy. It will come in certain moments when we can see that we are gradually averting a global crisis, that we have attended to the difficulties that our people will face because of the onset of climate change.
The chief executive hoped that the forum would bring about significant results that will advantage the national wealth and resources of the country. Nel Maribuhok, UNTV News and Rescue. We serve the people, we give glory to God.
Meanwhile, the Philippine National Police, or PNP, is still working to identify persons of interest in the killing of radio broadcaster Percy Lapid, who was shot dead in Las Piñas City on Monday night. Leia Ilagan reports why.
The Philippine National Police will investigate the murder of commentator Percy Mabasa, also known as Percy Lapid, from all angles. Police Colonel Kirby John Kraft, director of the Southern Police District and the supervisor of the Special Investigation Task Group, said they would investigate the people mentioned in his program.
I-review po natin na kanyang programa po. Marami po siyang nababanggit po ng mga personalities. So magkakaroon po tayo ng elimination po kung sino po yung posibleng maging suspect po dito.
Colonel Kraft, however, made it clear that not all of them would consider getting involved in the case.
Siyempre, meron tayong process of elimination. Hindi naman ibig sabihin sila na yun. Process of elimination. Natulong na rin. Kaya nga kausap ko mismo yung kapatid din niya. Sabi ko, si Sir Roy Mabasa, na Sir, baka pwede nyo kaming matulungan. Baka may alam ko yun. Hindi namang may galit or may ano itong ating biktima.
The SITG supervisor also said that they are coordinating with the family to know if Percy is receiving threat before the incident.
Siyempre po, yung mga informasyon na manggagaling doon po sa pamilya, alam naman na po natin na pag mga ganyan threat po ang isang tao, yung pamilya po ang unang nakakala.
Percy had 2 gunshot injuries from a .45 caliber pistol below his left ear. Additionally, according to Colonel Kraft, attackers are riding motorcycle while dressed in a shirt, pants, and helmet. Right after killing Lapid, they leave in the opposite direction. Leia Ilagan, UNTV, News and Rescue. We serve the people. We give glory to God.
President Ferdinand Bongbong Marcos Jr. is considering 3 candidates to replace lawyer Trixie Cruz Angeles as his press secretary. Nel Maribuhok reports.
Press Secretary Trixie Cruz Angeles announced her resignation due to health reasons, and Department of Transportation Undersecretary Cesar Chavez said that he is one of the candidates being considered to replace her.
I was already told a few days ago, I'm being considered.
Chavez did not disclose to reporters if he obtained the information from a Malacanang official, but he said it is an authorized person.
Pinanggit po na concentration po ay rail sector. Sinabi ko na hindi ako interested sa press office ng Malacanang.
Chavez said he has asked for time to consider the matter and added that he will also have to speak to Transportation Secretary Jaime Bautista. However, Chavez clarified this does not mean he is rejecting the possibility. The transportation official also reportedly named 2 other candidates who are vying for the position. Gilbert Remulla, a former journalist, and attorney Michael Toledo, who serves as the press secretary for the Estrada administration. When questioned about this by the media in a separate interview, Toledo didn't confirm or deny it. He did state, though, that he is willing to serve again as press secretary.
Tinawag na naman tayo para I will be humble and it will be an honor and a privilege to serve under the Marcos administration.
At the moment, Toledo is in charge of the Government and Public Affairs departments at both the MVP Group Media Bureau and Metro Pacific Investments Corporation. Remulla, meanwhile, said in a statement that he did not submit an application for the job at hand and emphasized that he is content with his current position as Board Director of the Philippine Games and Entertainment Board, or PAGCOR. Nel Maribuhok, UNTV News and Rescue. We serve the people, we give glory to God.
And for the news abroad, the capital of Ukraine is preparing its residents for a possible nuclear strike from Russia, while Russia's President Vladimir Putin pushes ahead with his annexation plan. Joselito Liquido will tell us the details live. Yes, Joselito.
Good evening, Marielle. Over fears of possible nuclear attack and radiation spread on Ukraine's capital, Kiev, the city council started to distribute anti-radiation or potassium iodine pills to its residents in evacuation centers. In a statement, the city health care department will also distribute potassium iodine pills to communal healthcare facilities and family doctors. These pills, Marielle, will help prevent the thyroid gland from absorbing harmful radiation. The preparations come as Russian troops are experiencing defeat in several regions, which raises fear that Russia may resort to nuclear actions as Vladimir Putin's previous threat of doing all means possible to win the war. On Monday, the Times newspaper reported that Russia has moved a train possibly containing nuclear munitions and that NATO military alliance warned that Putin is planning to perform nuclear testing on Ukraine's border. However, Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov said Russia is not interested in engaging in nuclear rhetoric with the Western media and Western politicians. Meanwhile, Russia has moved to annex 4 regions of Ukraine as an escalation of the war that the West continues to say they will not recognize and is illegal. Ukraine President Volodymyr Zelensky on Tuesday expressed that it has now reached the point that it is impossible to talk peace with Putin and will only open its doors to Moscow if it will be under a new leader. Ariel?
Thank you, Joselito Liquido, for that live report. The Japanese government deployed a rare emergency alert and urged residents to take cover. Meanwhile, Seoul officials apologized after a South Korean missile malfunctioned and exploded. Ruth Bahe will tell us why live. Yes, Ruth, go ahead.
Marielle, on Tuesday morning, Japanese residents in Hokkaido Omori Prefecture and Tokyo's Izu and Ogasawara Islands woke up to J alert warnings after North Korea launched a ballistic missile over the country without warning. Chief Cabinet Secretary Hirokazu Matsuno said the alerts were sent quickly thanks to the J alert system, which automatically sends warnings to municipalities through satellites and radio networks in the event of national emergencies. While no damage to the port facilities and ships have been reported, residents and workers expressed anger and frustration over the delayed services caused by the North Korean missile launch. Meanwhile, the military of South Korea has publicly apologized after a missile launch on Tuesday during a drill malfunctioned and crashed to the ground. There were no reports of injuries, but the noise and subsequent fire led some Gangneung residents to believe that the North Korea had launched an attack, according to media reports. Back to you, Anchor. Back to you, Marielle.
Thank you, Ruth Bahe, for that live report. Meanwhile, Iran's government has launched the Saman test spacecraft on Monday, a space tug that was built by the country's Space Research Center, capable of transferring satellites from one orbit to another. The spacecraft was unveiled back in 2017, and chief of the country's space agency said that officials are hoping to use and test the craft in the near future. Iran has long pursued a space program which it says is intended for peaceful purposes, but the United States fears that Iran's civilian and military space programs may be used to advance its ballistic missile program. Over the previous years, Iran also faced a series of failed attempts to launch satellites into the space. In April 2020, Iran's paramilitary Revolutionary Guard revealed its own secret space program by successfully launching a satellite into the orbit. We'll share more global stories with you later, but for now, back to you, Harleen and William.
Thank you, Marielle. Measles and rubella case reports have increased by 153%, according to the Department of Health. A possible measles outbreak next year was also advised of by the Health Department. Eileen Cerudo filed this report.
The Department of Health has recorded a total of 450 measles and rubella cases, a 153% increase compared to 2021. Based on the data of the DOH from January 1 to September 17, 2 deaths have been reported. Most measles and rubella cases were reported in Calabarzon, Central Visayas, and Metro Manila. In Calabarzon, 70 cases were recorded, 61 in Central Visayas, while 47 cases were recorded in Metro Manila. There were also cases reported in Eastern Visayas, Zamboanga Peninsula, Northern Mindanao, and Sorsogon. Based on the number of cases, the three regions already surpassed the measles epidemic threshold levels. According to the department, the increase in cases is due to low vaccination coverage of children against the virus. The World Health Organization said measles is a highly contagious and serious disease. It is transmitted through eye contact and through the air. Symptoms include high fever, runny nose, a cough, red and watery eyes, and small white spots or rashes. Rubella, meanwhile, is a contagious infection which affects children and young adults. It may cause a mild fever and rash in children and adults. DOH officer in charge Maria Rosario Vergez said almost 3 million in the country have not yet received any of the 2 doses of vaccine against measles. She also warned that a measles outbreak is impending if cases continue to increase and vaccine coverage remains low.
At lahat po ng mga bata naman na hindi nakareceive ng kahit na anong dosis ng measles vaccine, kasi 2 beses po yan binibigay sa ating mga kabataan, ay nasa almost 3 million na mga kabataan. Kaya po nagpa-flag at nagwa-warn po ang WHO at UNICEF sa atin na kailangan natin pag-igtingin ang routine immunization because there might be an impending outbreak of measles in the country by next year if we are not going to do anything.
Eileen Cerudo, UNTV News and Rescue. We serve the people, we give glory to God.
The Department of Health remains optimistic in achieving its target in booster vaccination on October 8. The DOH targets to vaccinate first booster dose to 23 million individuals until Saturday. Asher Kadapan Jr. explains why.
The National Capital Region already vaccinated first booster dose to over half of its eligible population. But with only 30% target, the Department of Health says it may also be achieved in other regions. Based on the data gathered by the DOH, only 3 regions were able to reach the target, which includes the National Capital Region, Cordillera Administrative Region, and Region 1.
Kasi this is a proof na kayang marating siya kung natutulungan tayo. Ang isang ebidensya natin yung NCR dahil very active yung mga local government units, other stakeholders, government agencies. Na-reach natin yung target natin for the first 100 days. So hindi po imposible na ma-reach natin yung target in entire Philippines.
The DOH further explains that aside from vaccine hesitancy, most people believe that the primary series of COVID-19 vaccines are enough to protect them. To encourage more individuals to get vaccinated with first booster dose, the DOH provides incentives to local government units and vaccinees. They also urge LGUs to do the same.
Actually, part of the strategy natin for the first 100 days is for awards and recognitions of the local government units. And for the vaccinees naman and for the vaccination teams, merong mga rewards and incentives na ginagawa ang kanya-kanyang local government units and even the private sector.
The DOH, however, clarifies that they will continue the intensified COVID-19 vaccination efforts beyond October 8, the 100th day of the Marcos administration. Asher Kadapan Jr., UNTV News and Rescue. We serve the people, we give glory to God.
COVID-19 protocols for next month's bar exams were released by the Supreme Court. Dante Amento reports why.
The Office of the 2022 Bar Examinations Chairperson strongly urged examinees to undergo self-quarantine beginning October 26, 2022 or at least 2 weeks before the bar examinations. This year's bar exams would be on November 9, 13, 16, and 20, 2022 in different local testing centers nationwide. Examinees should limit non-essential movement and they are advised to avoid staying in hotels or dormitories where they may be high risk of exposure to COVID-19. Bar operations or gatherings as form of support to the examinees are prohibited. Fully vaccinated examinees will need to present their vaccination cards or certificates. Meanwhile, unvaccinated examinees must present negative RT-PCR or antigen test results from DOH-accredited testing centers. Those who recovered from COVID-19 and asymptomatic will be allowed to take the exams, but they should present negative RT-PCR or antigen test results and certification of the completion of the required quarantine or isolation. Symptomatic examinees but negative with COVID-19 tests and being cleared by the medical staff will be allowed to take the examinations inside the separate quarantine testing room. There shall be strict no-contact rule in all local testing centers. Examinees are required to bring their own food and drinks because they will not be allowed to go out throughout each examination day. The 2022 bar exams would be the second examinations by the Supreme Court during the pandemic. Dante Amento, UNTV, News and Rescue. We serve the people. We give glory to God.
The Department of Budget and Management provides additional funding to the Department of Health for unpaid wages of qualified healthcare and non-healthcare workers. The DOH is processing a total of 11.5 billion pesos for the payment of more than 1.6 million unpaid health emergency allowances or one COVID-19 allowance for the period of January to June 2022. This is in addition to the 1.5 billion peso fund that the DBM released for the remaining 55,211 unpaid special risk allowance or SRA. The DOH promises to make every effort to hasten the process of transferring the funds to the establishment of units and facilities for the immediate release to all qualified healthcare workers.
The Department of Migrant Workers will look into asking host governments that are employing Filipino health workers to contribute to a scholarship fund. This report will tell us why.
Amid the shortage of health workers in the country, the Department of Migrant Workers, or DMW, would like to seek the contribution of nations where Filipino health workers are in demand. DMW Secretary Susan Tuts Ople says they plan to raise the need to replenish the country's own pool of healthcare professionals during bilateral talks with host governments. The scholarship program is said to be managed by the Health Department.
Hindi po maiiwasan, sir, na aalis at aalis din sila eh. And I think it's also unjust to make them stay here. Dahil they've been waiting for the circumstances to change. We have proposed that we can come up with a pool of scholars. We will ask during our bilateral talks with other countries for them to contribute to a scholarship fund for medtechs, all kinds of health workers po.
Ople adds an interagency meeting will be held on Monday to talk about the deployment cap and a sustainability program for Filipino healthcare workers. The agency has proposed a 15 billion peso budget for next year, its very first budget after its creation was signed into law in December 2021. Bulk of the budget will go to the Overseas Workers Welfare Administration, or OWA, which will be an attached agency of the DMW. In today's Senate hearing, Ople also appealed to lawmakers to increase the budget for the expansion of services of the OFW hospital in Pampanga after it suffered a huge budget cut. She adds President Ferdinand Bongbong Marcos has directed the agency, together with the DOH, to look into designating OFW wings in various hospitals instead of putting up regional hospitals dedicated to OFWs and their dependents.
Kasi we presented the OFW hospital to him and sabi niya baka the direction towards health services for OFWs would be to look at which hospitals can accommodate an OFW wing po.
Siguro meron naman tayo, Secretary Tuts, no mga record kung saan marami ang OFW concentration. Probably we can study and explore that possibility.
Jorlene Delgado, UNTV News and Rescue. We serve the people. We give glory to God.
Job openings in the United States fell sharply in August to a 13-month low, a sign the red-hot labor market might be cooling off. Beverly Saison will tell us why.
According to experts, American companies are hiring less employees in response to rising interest rates and inflation in the United States of America. Fewer job openings mean that companies can give smaller pay increases and are able to attract and retain workers with less money. Economists say lower job openings are potentially good for both companies and the economy as a whole, as it can help cool the worst inflation America has seen in 40 years. They also forecast that it will show that employers added 250,000 jobs in September and that the unemployment rate remained 3.7% for a second straight month. From nearly zero in March 2022, the central bank has increased interest rates to the current rate of 3.25%. Federal officials hoped these rates will incentivize employers to hire less workers. Beverly Saison, UNTV News and Rescue. We serve the people. We give glory to God.
Members of the European Parliament voted for USB-C to be the common charger in effect by late 2024 for small handheld devices. From London, United Kingdom, here's Jella Garmino to tell us why. Yes, Jella, go ahead.
Mariel, with 602 in favor, 13 against, the European Parliament or EP voted to pass a new law forcing the USB-C as the single charger standard by late 2024 at Strasbourg on Tuesday. This comes after dozens of manufacturers of electronic items voluntarily agreed with the European Commission's suggestion on a single charging standard a decade ago. This now pushes Apple, who at the time refused, to drop its Lightning port used on iPhones and iPads for the European consumers. In 2 years' time, we can expect that the single charger standard will cover a variety of small handheld devices, including mobile phones, tablets, e-readers, mice and keyboards, GPS devices, headphones, headsets or earphones, digital cameras, portable speakers, handheld video game consoles, and more. Meanwhile, laptop manufacturers are granted extra time to follow suit by early 2026. EU policymakers argue that the centralized charger will make life convenient for its 450 million citizens of 27 countries, expecting to save at least 200 million euros or 11.67 billion pesos, as well as cutting more than 1,000 tons of electronic waste per year. Meanwhile, some residents are skeptical on the new policy.
I think on one hand, it's useful because we only have one charger for everything. But on the other hand, it could damage some of the innovation that is coming up right now, and also it might become obsolete in a few years. So it might be a double-edged sword.
I think it doesn't really bothers me.
Yeah.
But it can bother a lot of people since we all bought already a lot of USB cables already. First of all, and second of all, we have phones with the USB cables still, so it's going to be complicated to swap from normal phones that we have right now to something new just to use the USB-C one.
Back to you, Marielle.
Thank you very much, Jella Garmino, reporting live from London, United Kingdom. Researchers are funding studies on waxworms in a potential advance in combating climate change. Paul Gatchalian will tell us why live. Yes, Paul, go ahead.
Marielle, researchers recently identified that the saliva of waxworms contain enzymes that can easily degrade polyethylene, the most common type of plastic in the world, in just a few hours. The enzymes in their saliva trigger a chemical oxidation reaction on the plastic molecules without needing any heat or radiation to activate the process. Molecular biologist Federica Bertuccini of the Spanish National Research, CSIC, expressed that this is a positive outlook against the growing plastic pollution. Bertuccini adds that the plastic has plagued the earth for centuries, as it can remain intact for so long, creating a significant impact not only on climate change but also human health. Waxworms are originally considered pests by beekeepers, having known to feed on beeswax, honey, pollen, and even bee larvae. Now, scientists are looking at synthetically reproducing the worm's enzymes from their saliva to degrade plastic waste buildup all around the globe. German plastics engineering company Roschling is funding the research with Bertocchini as one of the two leaders working to commercialize the enzyme product. The United Nations will have a legally binding deal by 2024, approving the world's first ever global plastic pollution treaty. Back to you, Mariel.
Thank you, Paul Gatchalian, for that live report. And those are the reasons behind the news in other parts of the globe. I am Mariela Toza reporting live from Perth, Australia. Good evening.
Reported that its preparations for the 2022 Barangay and Sangguniang Kabataan elections is currently at 80%. But COMELEC spokesperson Director John Rex Laudianco said if the polls will be postponed, they will immediately proceed with the resumption of the continuing voter registration next month, which includes the reactivation, transfer of voting place, among others. The BSKE postponement bill is now ready for the President's signature to become law.
Kasi nga po, pag lumabas talaga ang batas, kailangan po kaming magparehistro. Ititrain na po namin muli ang tao namin so we could start the registration by November.
On World Teachers Day, Vice President Sara Duterte pays tribute to teachers. Meanwhile, educators renewed their call to the government to upgrade their salaries. Janice Henta reports.
Apart from advising students to love, respect, and support their teachers, Vice President and Education Secretary Sara Duterte called on Filipinos to thank teachers for helping the school children in academics and morality. In a previous interview, Vice President Duterte praised teachers for their contribution to nation building and molding the minds of young Filipinos.
Ang ating pong mga guro ay ating mga dangal ng bayan and dapat po natin bigyan ng importansya ang kanilang role sa ating nation building. Napakahalaga po ng ating mga guro in molding the youth, which is the future of our country. Dapat po tayong lahat ngayong araw na ito, lahat ng mga teachers na nadaanan natin ay magpasalamat tayo sa kanilang dedication, sa kanilang integrity, sa kanilang disiplina na tulungan tayong lahat.
Duterte thanked all the teachers in public and private school for their sacrifices and dedication in her speech at the National Teachers Day celebration held at Banguid in the province of Abra. Additionally, Vice President Duterte reaffirmed her commitment to giving their need for educational infrastructure and facilities first priority in order to deliver high-quality education to all students around the country.
So kailangan lang we will apportion the meager resources that we have, the budget that we have right now. Meron kaming standardization para mapaniguro na equal yung distribution ng resources sa mga nangangailangan. So meron kaming checklist na ginawa, meron kaming point system na ginawa para sa infrastructure projects para na-address yung access, na-address yung equity o yung pag-distribute ng resources sa iba't ibang local government units natin na lahat nangangailangan.
Meanwhile, a group of teachers conducts a unity walk from Nicanor Reyes Street in Sampaloc, Manila to Mindiola as part of the National Teachers Day celebration. The group reiterates its request to the government and the Department of Education to raise their salary grade 11, which is worth 25,000 pesos per month, to 35,000 pesos or salary grade 15.
Nakadalawang sulat kami sa KBP Sara. Unfortunately ay wala kaming natatanggap ang mga positibong mga kasagutan dito. Kaya kami ay lumalabas sa lansangan, nagpa-petition at kami ay hihirit. Nagkakaroon kami ng petition signing ngayon sa Kongreso at papadala namin sa Malacanang.
The Department of Education had previously said that the next round of salary increases for teachers will begin next year with an increase of 1,500 pesos to their monthly pay or 27,000 pesos for 2023. Janice Inhente, UNTV, News and Rescue. We serve the people, we give glory to God.
Our kasangbahay, as the world faces these trying times amid the pandemic caused by coronavirus, we are inviting everyone to join the global prayer for humanity.
Good day. I'm Brother Eli Soriano of the members of the Church of God International. I want to invite you to join us in a minute of prayer every day to pray for humanity and the whole world as we go through these perilous times. While safety measures like washing of hands and strengthening of our immune systems may help us through this horrible predicament, there is still no precaution or cure more powerful than God's mighty intervention. And we need His intervention now more than ever. It doesn't matter what religion you are in or what denomination you belong. This is an invitation for all the people around the world who cares for the future of their family, friends, loved ones, and humanity as a whole. Everybody is welcome to pray with us. For more details, you can check out the description box below. Thank you very much, and I hope to hear from you soon. May God bless you.
Before we close, we will leave you with a word, giving glory to God. From the book of James, chapter 1, verse 20, it says, "For the wrath of man worketh not the righteousness of God." And those are the reasons behind the news October 5, 2022. Reasons we deliver to you as they unfold. I am Harleen Delgado.
And because we need to know, we will always ask why. I am William Theo. We serve the people. We give glory to God.